And the American people do have other concerns that we ought to be thinking about and talking about.
Respectfully,
And
Madam Secretary, I think.
The customary din of disruptions, clamorous opinions, and mayhem appeared to temporarily subside when Condoleezza Rice entered the view. Rice refrained from engaging in the usual political pyrotechnics when the topic of the January 6th Capitol attack came up. Rather, she assumed command, characterizing the event as an outright attack on law and order. Then, as the conversation was about to veer into a rehashing of old grudges, Rice changed course. She directed attention to the urgent problems that Americans are currently dealing with, such as growing inflation, skyrocketing gas prices, and the daily hardships that families face. She was obviously there to refocus the conversation on what really matters, not to create controversy. The difference between the two was instantly apparent when Sunny Hostin interacted with her. Their styles contrasted in ways that spoke a lot about their perspectives, and they came from quite different worlds.
The past will become prologue if we don't find out exactly what happened January 6th.
And we will.
So it's not time right now.
We will find out.
We must find out before moving on.
Sunny Hostin has a fast-paced, boisterous debate style that is characterized by interruptions and incisive claims that take front stage. Condoleezza Rice, on the other hand, exudes a quiet authority, a cool, collected demeanor that doesn't need loudness to draw attention, while Rice's experience as a former Secretary of State offers her a distinct advantage: the capacity to reduce complicated subjects to clear, logical arguments. Sunday's style feeds on vigor and strong opinions. A fascinating conversation was sparked by this stylistic contrast. With its overlapping arguments and dramatic interruptions, The View's typical mayhem was still very much present. As usual, Sunny was poised to jump at any chance, but Rice remained unflinching. Rather, she took a calm approach to the conversation, speaking authoritatively about the attack on January 6th, before turning the conversation to more pressing issues like inflation and growing gas prices. The room froze when Rice continued, "Respectfully, let me finish." It was an uncommon instance of clarity in a noisy environment.
You're going to overcome it, and you are going to be anything you want to be. And that's the message that I think we ought to be sending to kids. One of the worries that
Sunny was unprepared for Rice's calm opposition, because she was used to directing conversations with forceful remarks and interruptions. Rice resisted Sunny's attempt to interrupt, demanding calmly but firmly that she make her point. The goal was to remain focused on the actual problems affecting Americans, not to shut anyone down. A tense yet telling moment resulted from Rice's composed manner. In contrast to Sunny's obvious displeasure, the energy in the room changed as her calm voice brought attention to inflation, growing gas prices, and the difficulties families confront. Recognizing a change in power in the discussion, the other panelists, who were usually ready to join in, sat quietly. Sunny's typical strategies of interruptions and theatrical indignation failed. Rice's sensible and well-reasoned answers left her frantically trying to recover control. The difference was evident to the audience. One was presenting solutions, while the other was enacting drama. Sunny attempted to counter as Rice completed her case. Seeing Rice's performative approach demolished by logic and evidence was nearly agonizing. The significance of Rice's remarks appeared to be understood even by the other panel members. The conversation on The View, for once, moved from showmanship to substance. Even more unexpected was what followed: applause from the crowd. Condoleezza Rice had brought realism to a show that was sometimes dominated by sensationalism.
Yes, education. Their children are in school 7 hours. That's very formative.
Applause was genuine, resonant, and spontaneous rather than merely courteous or required. The audience roared as Condoleezza Rice spoke about the hardships Americans are suffering, such as inflation, growing gas prices, and the difficulty of making ends meet. Her lucidity and common sense, which the audience acknowledged were uncommon in The View's typical theatrics, were the reason for the applause, not her drama or philosophy. This was a moment of truth, not the sort of cheering that follows a heated argument. The mood changed from pandemonium to focus as a result of Rice's quiet yet forceful speech. It served as a reminder of the important things in life. This section served as a wake-up call in addition to being a political argument. Sensationalism is a common tendency of the media and political programs, which obscures the actual issues that ordinary Americans face. Rice's involvement served as a sobering reminder that the things that really matter are things like inflation, job stability, and living expenses. All too frequently, The View reopens old disputes by delving into political scandals from the past. Rice broke that pattern by directing the discussion to the issues that millions of people are currently facing. Her strategy stood in stark contrast to Sunny Hostin's emphasis on the past in order to get points. It was a collision of priorities as much as personalities, and Rice remained steadfast in her conviction that political theater cannot overshadow pressing problems. The panel seems to sense the change as well. Normally ready to jump in, Joy Behar fell silent. The voice of reason, Whoopi Goldberg, did not intervene.
The way that we're talking about race is that it either seems so big that somehow white people now have to feel guilty for everything.
It was all in Ana Navarro's anxious smile. The customary mayhem of The View ceased as Condoleezza Rice took charge of the discourse. It was not just what Rice said, but also the way she delivered it calmly, authoritatively, and without resorting to showmanship. The panel was clearly unprepared. As a result of her attention to the facts and urgent issues like inflation and gas prices, Rice calmed the room in that instant. Using reason rather than hatred or indignation, Rice and Hostin's altercation was more than just a personality quarrel. It was a symbol of a larger problem with the media's propensity to emphasize drama over content. Shows like The View frequently ignore the everyday hardships of Americans in favor of soundbites, conflict, and historical scandals. This defect was shown by the way Rice looked. She shifted the conversation away from recounting the incident on January 6 and focused on practical concerns, like job security and living expenses. Even if historical events are important, her presence served as a reminder that Americans' current pressing problems must be addressed. Rice's intervention was a plea to refocus, not only a political statement. Her cool-headed strategy provided a model for how media debates may put content before show.net.
I think parents ought to have a say. We used to have parent-teacher conferences. We used to have PTAs. There are lots of ways for parents to be involved, and they should be. My parents never thought I was going to grow up in a world without prejudice, but they also told me that's somebody else's problem.
Became evident following Rice's impactful appearance. This was a turning point for both her and Sunny Hostin. Known for her audacious remarks and numerous disruptions, Hostin found her typical strategies to be ineffectual. The boundaries of performative outrage were revealed by Rice's poise and attention to the pertinent concerns. This was not merely a political dispute. The media's preoccupation on sensationalism at the expense of meaningful discussion was criticized. Rice stood out with her composed, issue-driven demeanor, in contrast to The View, which thrives on controversy and short sound bites. Her intervention gave viewers a lot to think about. The media's constant obsession with spectacle frequently obscures the urgent problems that affect regular Americans. Amid the cacophony of dramatic discussions and soundbites, issues like rising inflation, skyrocketing gas prices, and the difficulty of making ends meet are often overlooked but have a significant impact on people's daily lives. Rice's appearance on The View was more than just a compelling segment. It was a masterclass in shifting the narrative from drama to depth. It wasn't merely about rebutting the opinions of others on the panel. It was about skillfully redirecting the conversation to focus on the real issues at hand, with precision and grace. Rice emphasized the actual difficulties Americans are grappling with: rising inflation, skyrocketing gas prices, and the day-to-day financial challenges facing families. Her poise and sensible approach offered a rare moment of clarity, standing in sharp contrast to the theatrics that typically define the show's dynamic. This was more than a singular moment of composure. It was a demonstration of leadership in communication. Rice didn't need to raise her voice or resort to dramatics to make her points. Instead, her calm and thoughtful demeanor created an atmosphere where substance took precedence over spectacle. This stark contrast highlighted just how uncommon it is for conversations on mainstream platforms to remain anchored in meaningful, solutions-driven dialogue. For Sunny Hostin, the episode was undoubtedly humbling. Hostin, known for her audacious remarks, quick pace, and frequent interruptions, found her usual tactics ineffective against Rice's composed perseverance. While Hostin thrives in the heated, high-energy exchanges that dominate The View, Rice's approach left little room for her to employ her typical strategies. Instead of engaging in a reactive back-and-forth, Rice held firm, making it abundantly clear that the focus needed to remain on the pressing concerns facing Americans today, rather than on rehashing past controversies. This moment served as a wake-up call for more than just Hostin. It was a jolt for the entire media landscape. In an era where sensationalism and conflict often dominate airtime, Rice reminded viewers, and the industry alike, of the critical importance of addressing the issues that matter most. By steering the discussion toward tangible concerns like job security, living expenses, and economic challenges, she revealed a glaring gap in how media prioritizes its coverage. What happened on The View wasn't simply a critique of the show's format. It was a broader challenge to the media industry as a whole. Too often, shows opt for controversy over substance, prioritizing moments designed to spark viral debates, rather than fostering discussions that offer real solutions. Rice demonstrated that a meaningful, solutions-driven conversation is not only possible but also essential in today's fractured media environment. Her ability to maintain composure, focus on real-world challenges, and rise above the chaos offered a powerful lesson for panelists, producers, and audiences alike. It wasn't just a moment for The View to pause and reflect on its approach, but a moment for all of us to reconsider the priorities of public discourse. This wasn't just a memorable episode, it was a call to action. It reminded everyone watching, both in the studio and at home, that the issues impacting millions of people deserve more attention than the theatrics and sensationalism that so often dominate these platforms. Rice's yet impactful intervention underscored how the media can and should pivot toward depth, fostering conversations that resonate with the realities of everyday life. It was a moment of reckoning, a reminder of what truly matters, and a blueprint for how public dialogue can rise above the noise.